What's up, guys? Episode 1 of the Trade Up podcast. Today we're here with a special guest. His name's Wally. Wally's an old friend of mine. We met in an AA meeting. Wally's roofed with me before, so we have a long history. Wally went on to start a scrapyard business. He does, what are you going to do this year in sales?
Just under $5 million.
Just under $5 million in sales. So me and him have a similar story. We met at the very beginning, so I figured he'd be the perfect guest for episode 1. So what's up, Wally?
Happy to be here. I spoke to my wife about it. And her first question is, "Are you going to get into the roofing stuff?" And I'm like, "I'm sure Andy's going to want to hear about the
into
roofing
you roofing with me." Oh,
yeah.
for sure. Before we start all that, let's back up to your childhood.
Okay.
How'd you grow up? When did you start fucking up? What did that look like?
Okay.
What happened?
From upstate New York. Regular middle class family, working class. I started screwing around when I was about 14, but it kind of got bad. 17, 18.
What do you mean screwing around? What does that look like?
Drinking, smoking weed. I mean,
Yeah.
just what every young teenager does, and then it progressed into the pills and psychedelics.
Not every young teenager, though. Well, I think that way too, but
you're probably right.
Yeah, because when I meet people as an adult now, I just find out not everybody was like us. when we were
I forget
kids.
that too. It's a good point.
A lot of people have never been in a fight. A lot of people, didn't really screw up like we did. We think like that. The same shit everybody did. Everybody wasn't doing that.
Good reminder. So I started doing the stuff that guys like us did, and then I got into it pretty heavy. Ended up in prison at 19. Did a couple years, got out. Kept screwing up.
I don't think I can let you just slide over the prison part.
How'd
you end up in prison at 19?
So I was selling drugs, and somebody had robbed me, so I decided it'd be a good idea to rob them back. And we robbed them back, and they called the cops. And so did a couple years in New York. Looking back at it now, and I can say it, I'm comfortable enough. Scared to death, right? But had to put on this tough guy facade, which isn't the case. And that kind of screwed me up even more when I got out. I had to continue to put on this facade,
right?
Which ultimately led me to more drugs. And
so you feel like being in prison for 2 years really changed you for the worse for when you were getting out?
When I was getting out, now I can look at it and say I can look at the positive in it. But for the time being, I don't think this whole podcast is going to go to our correctional facilities and how that is, because that's a whole different story. But yeah, I mean, it definitely screwed me up a little bit, You're forced to kind of live a certain way in there, and like I said, put on a facade and kind of, fake it to make it, I guess,
So you get out of prison and you don't change your life right away and live happily ever after.
No.
What happens after prison?
Got out of prison, kept selling drugs, partying. Met my wife, who I'm still with today. Ended up having a child really young, so my son, Wally Jr. is 14 now. And that still didn't straighten me out. Ended up getting into the hard stuff, heroin, crack, everything, basically, all the stuff. I know that stuff's not normal, so stuff everybody does.
Yeah, people always ask me if I'm doing a podcast or something. I'll just say I was into drugs and I had to go to rehab. They're like, "What drug were you doing?"
Yeah,
I like heroin. And
oh, you were doing real drugs.
That's extreme.
Yeah. So I did that, and I burned it to the ground pretty badly for a long time. Gave up custody of my kids. My wife ended up starting to use with me. And that's how I ended up in Florida. Eventually, I was done. I had a moment where I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I ended up in a rehab in South Florida, and that was the start of everything.
That was your first rehab?
I had done one other one when I was on parole, but yeah, that was my first one.
Yeah.
My first real rehab, yep.
Did you feel like when you decided you were going to go to the rehab in Florida, did you feel like when you made that decision you were done? From before you even went to rehab, just when you decided you were going to rehab? Did you just kind of know?
I knew I really wanted to stop, yeah, and that had never happened before, right? A lot of people say, oh, I tried stopping. I never, me and you talk about this a lot. I'm an extremist. Once I'm going. There's no stopping. There's no slowing down. It's balls to the wall until it either gets good or I burn it down, and that's what I did. So I knew that I really wanted a change in my life, and I went in there I'm gonna really try this. I'm gonna try it. Whatever they tell me to do, I'm gonna do. I'd come to a point where I was teachable, right? Like I had no more like my way, you know, because as a guy growing up and a man, like when people tell me what to do, like I'm like, no, I can figure this out. I can do this. And at that point in my life, thank God, like I had a moment of clarity where like I'm just gonna listen to someone else. Like these guys seem to have their shit together. And I used to talk to my first sponsor about this. I was tired of being broke too. Like I had made some money. I always sold drugs, so I had made some money before, and then you know, get high on your own supply, then I'd start burning it down. But I'd been successful. I had a job for a little while in there doing sales where I was doing really well, but I just, you know, that was part of it. I was tired of being broke. Lost everything, family, kids. I had a second child at that time, my daughter, and yeah, I was ready for a change.
So even though you were like a pathetic drug addict that whole time, you were still gaining experience and learning things that you would end up using later. You would say that?
Yeah, absolutely. I had gotten into that salvage business when I'd first gotten out of prison. Someone gave me a shot, and I wasn't quite into the hard stuff yet. So I had a couple years there to gain some experience before I was totally strung out. And I learned a lot, you know, because salvage and scrap go hand in hand. Anything from a salvage car that can't be recycled and reused for a new car, or like, you know, if you crash your car and they write it up for a used fender because they can't get one. You know, anything that can't be used like that, or an engine, if your engine blew, that gets recycled, right? That'll go to a shredder, that'll go to a mill, whatever type of processing needs to be done before that can be recycled. So I had some knowledge of it. I mean, aluminum wheels, the wire harness. A lot of people, our industry is kind of a niche industry of like, people still think that, you know, when I tell them I'm in scrap metal, I have a friend of mine, Andrew, he works for a $1 billion a year recycling company, and he went to a party and he asked, or someone asked what he does, and he said, I buy scrap metal. And they said, oh, I have a refrigerator at my house, can you come? I swear to God, this is a real story. They said, I have a refrigerator at my house, can you come get it? And he kind of laughed and like, yeah.
Dude, that just goes to the general disrespect that blue collar industries get in America.
Yep.
Like, I'm in the scrap business, and they're like, oh, I got some scrap metal out back. You want to come pick it up on a Saturday?
And it's funny because our industry as a whole is trying to change that. We're trying to change it to recyclable goods or recyclable material. You know, people don't know, like 70%, your roofs, it costs, when you get a metal roof, the cost for them to recycle metal into new sheet metal is 70% less with recycled metals rather than it is to mine iron ore. You know, it keeps your costs down. It keeps energy costs down. It's deemed an essential industry. You know,
yeah,
it's just,
dude, your business is cool, which we'll get into it later. You're in a cool business, and your ceiling's a lot higher than mine, I think. You know,
eventually, yeah.
So like, just like how far you could take it is a lot higher than mine. You grew up normal middle class kid.
Yep.
Sold drugs. Ended up in prison 2 years. Got out of prison. Started to work a little bit. Then really fucked your life up. Gave up your kids at one point. Finally decide, all right, I'm done. I'm going to Florida. You go to rehab. We don't need to stay on this too long, but what's one thing, just talk about rehab a little bit. A lot of people have no idea what rehab's like.
Oh, man. Talk about rehab a little bit. I mean, it sucks in the beginning, right? You're so used to being on drugs and just numbing everything that you want to do, and you go there, and then all of a sudden you're in a house with 10 other shitbags, and, you know, the odds are 9 of them are not going to stay sober. And yeah, it's difficult. I mean, I wanted to fight guys in the house. I wanted to sleep. That wasn't happening. Like, it's really hard to see, like, what my life is today when you're in that situation, right? You kind of just got to be like, what you talked about. Like, I know I'm done. Like, I got to take this one step at a time. So, you know, for me, it was a relationship with God and surrounding myself with some people who actually had a little time in their lives together, just a little bit. You know, one of the cliche things, like, you know, show me your friends and I'll show you who you are. Like, you know, your dad probably, so true. Like today, me and you talk, I have friends that are like positive influences that are doing something with their life. And that was kind of hard to navigate through. In rehab, you know, it's a small number of people who really want to get their lives together.
I see that as the number one big problem with AA. It's not a problem with the AA system, but just like what you see guys get into.
Yep.
The newly sober guys only hang around newly sober people, and then they get stuck in these little groups, and none of them ever grow up. None of them ever change their lives because they're just around each other.
Yeah.
Whereas like me and you, we got hooked up with older guys. I kind of stayed away from all the young people meetings. The meeting I went to was like 50 and up.
Yeah.
And like I was the only young guy in there, but all these guys have been sober 20 years.
Yeah.
You know, so I latched on to Bobby, like,
Yep.
you know, latched on to people. Like, he got sober 30 years ago. He started making great money, has a great career for himself. Like, that's who I latched around.
Yeah.
Then you see the other kids, they're hanging around all the newly sober people. One of them's relapsing every other week.
Chasing chicks around,
Yeah.
you know. And it comes to, like, you can bring that full circle on, you know, you said when you're ready and you go into this, it comes down to humility. I thought about that coming over here, and I know you will agree with it. Like, the humility to be teachable to these older guys. Like, okay, this guy is successful, has his life together, seems happy, happily married, whatever it may be. And, like, I'm going to listen to him.
Right.
You know? And it's the same thing in business. You know, me and you, I know you have a couple guys, like older guys who've been entrepreneurs and successful for a long time. Like, I have those couple guys, like, if you're listening to this and you're in business, like, couple mentors that I talk to
For sure.
and bounce stuff off of. You know, I'm not that smart, and I know I'm not. We talk about it all the time. You know, I have to have guys to bounce stuff off of, and it was the same in recovery.
Would you say that's the reason that the success rate is so low for people getting sober? Is they don't like get beat into the humility phase where they can look at guys that have done it already and just listen to them, even if they just can't listen.
Well, I think a lot of people just get pushed in by their families. Like you said, you went to a couple before, but if you weren't ready, you know, and then if you're not ready and you don't want it, why are you going to go listen to this old guy who it seems like you have nothing in common with? You know.
Okay, let's fast forward to when we met. Because what I remember from meeting you, we were in that little AA meeting, the small group in the back room, I remember. And you were telling me that you had a job where you were crawling around attics doing the hurricane retrofitting.
Yeah.
You were like, I'll just crawl around on attics on this little surfboard and add some screws to this little metal piece. And I'm like, oh, dude, that sucks. Why don't you come roofing with me? And you did.
Yeah.
And you started roofing with us. So I got to ask you, what was that experience like?
Worst job ever. And I wouldn't say that as like, we work in the scrap industry. We work. I don't wish it upon anybody. It served a purpose, and I'm really grateful for it, and it got me to where I am. But maybe it's different. I don't know. I haven't done it up north. Like, I did it in June, July, and August as well in Florida. 2 months out of rehab. And I was the bitch of the crew, you know, because I didn't know anything. So, you know, having those days where I remember we'd tear off and I'd go down on the floor and you'd be like, all right, pick up those shingles, and you'd look at it and it's like a monumental task. And you'd hand me a wheelbarrow and I could hear you in your head like, look at this retard, you know, going to pick up shingles. And you didn't even tell me there was fiberglass in them, so I'm picking them up with no shirt on and just covering myself in fiberglass.
I was looking through my pictures last night, and I found an old picture, and she'll probably put it in the video. But I found an old picture of you with your shirt off roofing.
Yeah.
You looked ripped.
I was in shape back then. I need to start roofing again. Put me on a crew.
But worst job you ever had, hands down.
Hardest. I don't know about worst. Like the crew we had fun and but physically demanding. Yes, it was the hardest job I've ever had. Yeah.
What did you think of me back then?
I don't know. We always kind of got along. You know, I don't think I saw this for either of us. I don't think that was even in the cards. We were just like living day to day. Like we need to make some money. But me and you always got along great. You know, we had a cool little crew. It was fun. We'd laugh, and then also it would be serious. You know, when I really thought you were an asshole though was when you used to make us pick up the little tiny pieces of paper. And I remember we had done a tear off, and they had like a gravel bed, and like, dude, like little tiny pieces of paper. Like, yo, dude, there's hundreds of them here still. I'm like, this guy really wants me to pick up every single piece of roofing paper.
Dude, you know where that comes from? My childhood. When I was 13, my dad used to drop me off with the guys, and I wouldn't go on the roof then. But I was the ground guy. So they would make those big piles of trash, and I would do that when I was 13. And at the end of the day, I don't know why, but I just like had to get every single little piece like from my childhood. So then, you know, we're doing roofing, and it was the same way. Yeah. But I know every time I said that to someone, I could see them like look at me so defeated, like, what do you mean I got to pick all that up? I'm like, yeah, you got to pick it all up, and then I would come do it with you at the end of the day, like. But that's funny.
Those are the little things, though. Now that you have a roof, like, as a homeowner now, right, I look at that, like, that stuff would mean a lot, right? To make sure that the final product is super clean. Like, what's it say if you leave a bunch of shit sitting around?
You can do the best job ever up on the roof, but if you leave a mess on the ground, the homeowner's going to hate you and think you did a terrible job. Right. And that's like a small part of the job. It's not even what you paid us for, the roofing, but like the cleanup. The cleanup's super important. Yeah. So you roofed with me for a little while. I don't remember
3 months,
how long.
just about 3 months.
3 months. What did you do in between roofing and starting the scrapyard?
I managed a salvage yard. So we did the hurricane work, which was great. We had done that hurricane work, which was a nice little break. We made good. Back then, it seemed like a ton of money. And I remember we made like $5,000. I thought like I had made it. You know. I went and managed a salvage yard. Didn't really work out. The guy who I was working with wasn't willing to give me the control I needed to change the operation. He's since sold it, and it wasn't doing.
Oh, that was the one up in Fort Pierce.
Vero. Well, I did Fort Pierce, and then I did one in Vero. So I did Fort Pierce for 2-3 weeks, and it just wasn't. The guy was, even back then. This was 6-7 years ago now. The guy was paying me $10 an hour, and I figured, let me show him that I know this industry, and he just wasn't going to give me any more money. So I managed a salvage yard. Just wasn't working out. He actually fired me. It's one of the, he fired me.
Well, this is good because you worked for 2 places. You felt like you had experience and you could bring value to the table.
Yep.
You felt like you were looking at the operation and there was things that they could be doing better. And like that's why I started a business, because I was working for those roofers. Like when you worked with me, we were just working for roofing companies.
Right.
And I would look at the business and I would think like they suck at it.
Yeah.
I was like, these guys are not good at it. I later learned it was way harder than I thought because you're naive when you're just an employee and you're like, I could make this place run better, and you think you have all these ideas and you think it's easy. I later found out it's not that easy.
Nope.
And then I ended up having respect for the people I used to work for that I didn't respect when I was working for them. But you had the same thing going on.
Yeah.
You were in 2 places. You're trying to help them out. You're trying to make them improve, and they weren't even letting you.
Yeah, exactly. I needed some control not even control. You need to let the leash off, But I also, like you said, my perspective now looking at it, like, okay, you got this young guy, says he knows what he's doing. It's a lot of trust to be like, all right, here's the corporate card, buy, spend what you need to make. It's a lot, It's a lot. It's a certain type of person, and you kind of got to earn that.
When you were working for those places, did you have at that time the end goal, like I want to go on my own, or not yet?
I think it started to grow as I was at the second location. And then after he fired me, I'm trying to think if I had anything in between. I don't think I did. I think I had a couple weeks where I wasn't working, and then it was actually my sponsor at the time, who's still a mentor of mine, like one of my closest friends, Kenny. And we'd talk about stuff. I'll bounce off him, then bounce off you. He had mentioned something. He was looking to start a new business. He had sold his previous business, and we had said it one day at dinner, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to write a business plan. I had no idea how to write a business plan, so I had to look it up online and found like some templates of a business plan. And, I took maybe 3 or 4 hours. I compiled some information, what some equipment would use. I just went off a template, It's the only way to start. The internet's a great tool, right? Like, I don't know how to do this. Let me look something up online and figure it out. And I wrote a business plan, and he was like, yeah, let's try this. And that's how it kind of got started.
What like dreams or goals or expectations did you have for the business when you decided? When you're writing a business plan, like, did you want to make it huge? Did you not really know? Like, do you remember what your expectations were, or like where you were at?
So it's funny. Kenny did a little test on me, and he made me write something called a wish list. And at this time, it was going to be a salvage and a scrapyard. So we were going to do cars and car part recycling, and also buy metals. So they kind of, like I described earlier, they go hand in hand. And my wish list at that time, I swear to you, was a wheel refinishing station, because that's the most sold item off of wrecked cars, or believe it or not, the wheels. So I saw that there was a lot of profit there, and he was like, well, what do you want for yourself? And I put a nice office chair. I didn't really, even at that point, I'm like, listen, we all want nice things, right? But like, that wasn't really, I was like, so I guess it was to grow the business, Yeah. I knew that there was huge value in a wheel refinishing station. You take scraped up wheels, you refinish them, either paint them, and then that's where your margins are. You get buying on a car that's $300, you'll sell that wheel for $700, just one wheel if it's refinished. So, and he said to me, he was like, you have a business mind, we're good to go. It was like a little test that he had done, because he invested and built a lot of businesses.
Well, we were dirtbags, so like, when I think back how I was when I started, like I didn't want anything.
No.
Like, I over the years transformed into someone that does like nice things. Like you go on nice trips now.
Yep.
But in the beginning, nothing. No. Like I needed,
it was a nice office chair.
I needed a pack of cigarettes and my work van. That's it.
Yep.
But like, what about the business success? Like, did you think 5 years down the road when you were starting out, like where you wanted this business to be, or not really?
Yeah, I knew I wanted a full service scrapyard. So it started with Kenny. I ended up buying out, no longer my partner, but still one of my closest friends. And I wouldn't be here without him. This Scrap Gators, I mean, maybe it could have been, but it would have been a little bit harder road. He bought us a box truck and a 300 square foot storage unit is how it started. So about a $25,000 investment. And then he ended up investing a lot more as we started to get a little momentum. But I always wanted a full scrapyard. It's just like there's little steps in it. At first, looking at it, I see it like I remember having the thought like, why doesn't he just spend $5 million, buy the property, get the equipment, and like we're gonna kill it? But he's super smart. He's been in a ton of businesses. He's like, no, we start small.
Yeah.
You gain a little momentum, and then you go into that. But I remember thinking like, just spend $5 million, dude. Get us where we need to go. And now looking back at it, now that we have a pretty good sized business, and like. I'd never do something like that. Like you start small, like make sure you can get this going.
Right. Yeah, I feel like we've grown. I mean, we double every year, so like I guess that's pretty fast growth. But like when I look at the way it's progressed, it feels like slow, steady growth.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like I ever overextended myself. Like I've never truly had to worry about payroll. I've never truly had to worry about any debt that was owed, my vendors, any of that stuff. And then even now I'm starting to think about opening another branch in another part of Florida. And that's how I'm viewing it. I'm going to send 2 of my really good people from here over there, just 2 of them, 1 office person, 1 salesperson, a manager, and then I'm going to help out. And then my office can support them, and then that's it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to invest all this money and send this whole operation over there just to start off. That's not how you would do it.
No, and I think you and I were also the same. You can't rip the cash out of the company, right? You're saying you didn't have those problems. And I was lucky enough not to either. Cash is oxygen for our businesses, right? Like you have to have cash. And as you grow, like there's different levels, lines of credit and like scaling and there's a lot to that. But as we're making some money and we're talking, and I'm like, all right, I got to keep all the cash. And my wife was getting ready to come on and she was like, we had done, I think it was like 400,000, then we went to like 2.2 million the next year. And then we're getting into the next year and my wife still had another job at this point. Now she runs our office. But I was still paying myself $500 a week. Yeah. And she's like, can you like start paying yourself a little? I swear to God. And I'm like, yeah, I guess it's time. I guess it's time,
Well, that's a good point because I think about it to myself all the time because I delayed anything for myself either.
Yeah.
Like I drove in a wrapped company vehicle. I paid myself dirt. I lived in a shitty little rental house.
I remember we used to come over for the UFC fights.
Yeah, so like I didn't spend any money on myself either for a long time. But I always looked at it as like I'm a single guy, no kids, like it's easy for me. Like I don't have, because I always felt like I would want to spoil my family. But you were still able to stay disciplined even though you had 2 kids and a wife at home.
Luckily, and my wife told me, she was like, if you don't mention me, my wife was busting her ass at this time. Yeah. My wife was working like 60 hours a week. I mean, it was a struggle, for a long time. But yeah, my wife in the beginning like really held it together. She took care of the majority of the bills. Like I said, for a family of 4 in South Florida, my $500 a week wasn't doing a whole lot. But yeah, it was a funny time. She was like, we need to pay you more. I was paying my guys more.
And you did 2.2 million in sales and you were paying yourself 500 a week.
Yep.
I wasn't that low.
Yeah.
I wasn't that low.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's impressive, but that's what it takes. And that us being such dirtbags coming up, I think we were just okay with continuing to be poor.
Still living simple.
Yeah. So like that's why we never had like serious financial problems.
Yep.
A lot of people when they're scaling a business get in trouble.
Yeah.
But it's like it's discipline in the beginning.
Yeah.
And now you go on these nice vacations.
Oh yeah, I enjoy my life.
You drive
now.
a super nice truck.
Yep.
Like I did the same thing. I live in a nice place now. Like I have a nice truck. I can do pretty much whatever I want now. But I waited a long time.
Yeah.
Before that happened.
Yeah, we're both in year 6, right?
Yeah, and we both know guys that don't do nearly as well as us. That probably do a fraction of the sales that live larger than we do.
Yeah. It's tough, man. It's because listen, like there's certain things I want. Like me and my wife joke about it, right? Like I want like this nice watch, right? It's like $50,000. I'm not gonna buy it. Like I don't know any point in my life, maybe some point, like sure in the back of my head, like I want this watch, but I'm not gonna do that. I could invest that into my business and make that into a lot more. And it brings me into, on my way over here, I was thinking about, you actually really helped me into hiring our sales guy. I don't know if you remember, I was on my way back from Georgia. We did a big job in Georgia, made some good money. And I'm like, I called you and we were bullshitting. I'm like, I'm trying to bring this guy on. And I was like, it's a tough negotiation. And you were, me and you, when we talked, you're like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? You were like, pay him. And at this point, this is just about 2 years ago. Like, the number's like 6 figures, basically right there at 6 figures with perks and everything else. And I'm like, shit, man, I was being cheap. And you were like, you need these people. I'm like, I do. So I went in, I offered them a really good contract. That's helped change my business. I couldn't do that much more by myself. I was maxed out, and in what we do, there's only a certain amount of people. It's a really small industry for the amount of people that do it who are qualified to go out and buy scrap metal, refrigerators. That's a joke. But yeah, you helped me a lot on that. And now I look back at it like, man, that was such an important decision. But you had gotten in my ass about it. You're like, what?
Yeah, because the conversation I always have with myself is, okay, am I where I want to stay right now? No, of course not. No. Okay, where do I want to go? Double. And then I'll see where I'm at that point. All right, if I want to double my business, I'm going to need good people.
Yep.
It's just like, it's obvious.
Yeah.
So why be fearful and, suspect about it now? Just fucking do it.
Yeah.
And anytime I've hired someone, anytime I've bought equipment, I moved into the big office, we renovated it, we got nice office space, I've never regretted it.
No.
I've never invested in my business and been like, fuck, I shouldn't have done that. Never, not one time.
Yep.
But I remember before I hired my first office person, I was sick to my stomach. She wanted $1,200 a week, and I was like, dude, how am I going to afford $1,200 a week? Yeah. And then 3 weeks after she started, I'm like, I'm a fucking idiot. I should have done this 6 months ago.
Yep.
And then I just carried that attitude now to where, like, now we have multiple people that make 6 figures, and there's going to be more. I want all the people I'm with now to make 6 figures in 2 years.
Yeah, because that's what we're in the business of investing in people, right? And I always say, like, I don't know, I just don't have that mentality. Like, if I'm making a bunch of money and my guys are all living paycheck to paycheck, like, I don't want to be in that kind of situation. But yeah, man, that was a big move, and I was super happy I did it, and I'm going to continue to just invest in people. And
all right, I don't want to skip over the first couple years in business because those are Alex Hormozy. I watch him a lot. He calls it the Rocky cut scene. The Rocky movies where he's
it's a good analogy.
So he calls that period the Rocky cut scene, and he says every successful entrepreneur has to go through the Rocky cut scene. What does the Rocky cut scene to you look like? What was it like? How long did it last?
So it got real rocky, for a little bit. So when Kenny, who originally helped me start the business, we were just getting ready to start year 2. And we had no traction, right? We
what did you do in sales year 1?
230,000 maybe.
Okay.
But in our business, to try to get people's attention, we were working on like the smallest margins, and that's part of it in the beginning of business. Like, I remember being so fearful, and again, it's about scaling, right? We had very little overhead, so like I could do this deal and I could make $400. Or, I could try to make $600 and then lose it. So I was so fearful about that, and I would just undercut myself and working so close because I needed that $400. So that really started. Kenny didn't see a whole lot happening, and he was like, you know what, Wally, I'm just gonna step out of this. He was like, when we and he told me this. He said, I believe you're gonna make it. He said, when you make it. And this is, he invested almost $200,000 just eating because we were losing so much money. We had expanded to a bigger bay, and we were putting money out. We were just sinking. We couldn't get enough material at the right price to cover our overhead. So he put in almost $200,000, and he told me, Wally, when you make it, he said, give me $25,000.
Wow.
And I was like, Kenny, and to this day, I've told Kenny multiple times. I'm like, Kenny, do you just name the number? I'll make you a percentage owner again, doesn't want it. Wow. But after he left, it was just me, right? Just me. I still didn't have a license at the time, so I was getting a driver's
license. Yeah, because you're a criminal.
Still didn't have a driver's license at the time, and couldn't pay for my SEO, like any blogs to be added, anything else like that. I had $3,000 in the bank account, and so I had to make that work. Like, if someone, so at that time a big load of scrap to me was like $1,000. If I got $2,000 worth of scrap, I had to buy it, and like I said, I was working on super slim margins. Let's say I worked on 10%, and I made $200. I'd have to then drive it. I'd have to hire someone to drive for a couple hours to bring it down to a yard like 45 minutes away to make my. So I was really netting like $50 off the deal, and that happened for a while. And what really cracked our company open is we do a lot of HVAC recycling. So air conditioners are obviously a big business around here, and we break them down. We get the copper, the aluminum, the electric motors out of them. I found a guy. I saw a big crane at the Winn-Dixie. And I knew there was money in air conditioners. We had bought some. And they were removing the 17,000-pound air conditioner off the top. So I'm like, you know what? Pull over there. It's funny, like the way we got directed there. At the last minute, I said to go a different way, and we happened to pass it. Mm-hmm. It's like this super cool coincidence. We pull around back. I end up talking to the guy. It's a big company, a big mechanical contractor. You don't do jobs like that. The owner, I happened to catch the owner there, and he was just like passing by. Brings me up onto the roof. He's like, well, what are you going to pay for him? Now, this isn't like a cut and dry job, right? Like, he wants a flat rate for these. So I have to look at it. I'm like, all right, there's, 2,000 pounds of copper in it. The coils are worth so much. And I'm trying to process in my head. I've never done a job this big. I really don't want to let it
Do you take the calculator out in that moment? Or you're doing it all in your
everything
head?
is in my head. Yeah. And I'm guessing, because I don't know, like, if you're looking at something, I have a decent idea. I'm pretty experienced, but not on those particular units. So we end up coming to, I think we came to $9,000 was what his number was for all of it. So I pay the $9,000, but here's the kicker. I had to tell my wife I didn't have the money. I had $5,000 in the bank account at this time. I had to borrow $4,000 from my wife for this, from her working her ass off in our house fund.
Dude, that's so great.
So I borrow $4,000. She had $5,000 saved.
You basically gambled your whole business on
I lost money.
On what?
I lost money.
I thought you were gonna say and I made $40,000 out of it.
No, I lost $2,000 out of it. I lost $2,000. So I told him I didn't do great on it.
So you called him later.
Yeah, he said it to me. He was like, "Let me know how you do on that." I'm like, "All right." So I call him I'm like, "Hey man, I didn't do too good on that. I lost $2,000." I said, "After everything, that's not even labor. That's just on materials. I did it all myself by hand. Like, it was brutal. It was brutal. Like, these are huge units. All I had was a demo saw and a sawzall. I'm dragging out like 100-pound coils and then like using. It was so unorthodox, not the way to do it, but I did it. He's like, I'll tell you what. He's like, you have your flatbed, because we had our flatbed truck. He was like, come to Tampa. I have a smaller unit that we're doing. He's like, you can just have it. So ended up making like $3,000 or $4,000 off that. So it made up the $2,000, and I made another $2,000. This guy calls me, and he says to me, he's like, hey, I haven't really been scrapping these. I got some units on my property. Why don't you come up? It's 9 hours away in Georgia. So again, I got a couple grand in the bank. I have like $7,000 in the bank, somewhere around that at the time. I rent a car, and I'd have my dad drive me up because I still didn't have a license. Drive up, and I go up there. He's got 60 acres, and he's got like these 17,000-pound units. He's got like 25 of them up there.
Wow.
He's like, listen, just do it for me, and we'll split it. I'm like, all right. So I have to call a couple people, get a crew. I happen to know a guy who worked in scrap. He's super expensive, but he's good. He's really good. So I got him, and I call my brother-in-law, and he flies down. We get up there, and then I run into, I don't have enough business credit to rent an excavator. So I have to ask this guy again. I'm like, hey, can you rent the excavator for me? Because Kelly or United wouldn't rent me. He's like, yeah, no problem, kid. Again, some of these older business guys.
You still dealing with him today?
Yeah. He ends up doing it. We bust our ass dusk to dawn for 2 weeks straight, and we made $52,000 off that deal.
Wow.
Yep. And I took that money. I bought another trailer. I bought a 40-foot gooseneck. I bought a dually to drive with it, an older dually. I bought a plasma cutter. I put it all back into the business, and that was the start. And that guy, it goes back to when we were talking about the mentors. Like, that guy wanted to see me do good,
right.
And he gave me a shot, man, and we busted our ass. And same roofing symbol at the end, we were raking and cleaning everything, This guy gave me a shot, and it changed the trajectory of my business.
That's one of the things about being a blue-collar business owner that a lot of people, some blue-collar business owners don't go through that stage. Like, me and you started the same way, as the one and only employee.
Yeah.
So like I was out roofing, killing myself every day.
Yeah.
And then even when I got guys, I was still roofing with them every day and taking care of all the other shit. But like you go buy that big AC unit, you take it back to the shop, you're fucking by yourself, killing yourself, cutting it open with not the right tools, just doing whatever you had to do.
Yeah.
It's cool, man. But like there's a lot of people that own roofing companies that, you know, have never roofed a day in their life. They don't know what it's about. But when you start as the only guy, like the come up is literally, it's brutal hard work, like physically and then mentally with all the business shit too.
It's the sacrifice, dude. Like a lot of people, you know, I'm grateful for that. You know, I really am. Like I remember those times. The sacrifice, the risk. I think about a lot, risk and sacrifice. You know what I mean? Like there's always risk in that, and like some people's business model, like they might not go for something like that. But our business in particular, you're going to a consumer, you're going to deal with them once, right? 90% of our business, we're not like a traditional scrapyard, is business to business. We're servicing manufacturers, things like that. So like that risk was worth it to me to develop a relationship that we still have today.
Yeah, well, look, you gambled the whole business's net worth on one AC unit and lost money. Yeah. But then it ended up working out. That's what ended up getting you over the hump.
My wife almost divorced me. She was not happy, dude. Oh, I remember I think I like lied to her a little bit in the beginning. Like, yeah, I still got a little more material. She was like, hey, are you going to put that $4,000 back in the savings account?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was rough. It was rough, you know, but that was part of like that period in between, like we were talking about, to bring it back, of the Rocky period. That's what it was, man. Me getting up every morning early. I still do. Like I think Alex Ramosi says, or other people, like there's not a set thing, right? Like every successful business owner doesn't get up early. I'm one of them that does.
Yeah, me too.
4:30 in the morning, every morning, like I'm on that routine of like, sometimes I get to the office by 5:30. I'm quick in the morning.
Yeah, it was 5:15.
Yeah. And I might not even be super productive every morning, you know, but it's the ritual and the routine of being there. Like this is, man, I'm lucky enough where I really enjoy what I do, you know, and that's one thing I stress. Like if you're not doing what you enjoy, find something else, because I don't know. For me, it's not work. You know, I enjoy what I do.
Do you feel like it always felt like that?
Even in the beginning, I didn't mind. I mean, listen, it's better when you're making money, right? Like it is. But in the beginning, getting up and doing it, I didn't hate it. You know, I like what we do is a lot of like negotiating. It's a hustle. You know, it's we can bring it back to like I used to sell drugs. Now I sell legal commodities. You know, and like finding a good price. How do I prepare this to get a little more money? And like I enjoy it, so I'm lucky enough. But I still didn't hate it when I wasn't making money. I like the business, you know, and I think that's really important, to enjoy what you do.
Yeah. What do you think kept you going in the beginning when it's hard like that, and you're working from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to bed?
I had to, man. Even that little bit of money was so important for my family, you know, that I had to do it. Like I had to make it work, you know, or else I was starting over again.
You think your family was a motivator so much so that if you didn't have your family and you were just a single guy, it would have been harder? Like, you think that was...
Might have been, yeah. Might have been. I never thought about it like that. But, yeah, like, the big part of it is, like, and you and I know we're stubborn. Like, we're competitive on things. Like, I'm not going to give up. And I think you have to have that mentality.
I swear it's so simple. But I swear my number one driver is just I'm competitive.
Yeah.
Like, I look around at other guys that are doing better than me with their roofing company, and I just want to beat them.
Yeah, I do, too. And I hear people in my industry like, oh, it's not competitive. Like, I want to beat everybody.
Yeah, and not to the point where like I'm nasty or like I want them to go out of business. I just want to be the best one.
Yeah, I want to win.
Yeah, I swear it's the most simple thing ever, but that's what a lot of it is. I just want to be better than
If you have that competitive nature and that drive, then yeah, it works. And it works for me too. You know, and I look at these other guys, I'm like, what are they doing? And I'll take little pieces of other successful businesses and be like, I like that. I might implement that in my own way.
Well, you said something small earlier that we didn't even talk about. It was just that like neither of us have done shit yet, and that's how I always view it, because like people talk about it's not good to compare yourself to people ahead of you. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, but I compare myself to all the people ahead of me. That's who I look at. So I've never felt like I was killing it or like I did a lot. Like I could be proud of where I came from and where I am today, but I'm not. I'm not like satisfied.
No, I'm not either.
Because like all these other guys out here are doing this, and I'm only here. So like you said that little thing, but that's a little mindset thing that a lot of people don't have.
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, well, I'm making more money than my sister, or I'm making more money than my cousin, or I'm making the most money out of all my friends. Well, you compare yourself to the wrong people.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. No, we look at that. Me and you talk about it all the time. You know, be like, yeah, things are good, but we're not shit.
So where do you want to go? Because you said that your family was kind of the thing that brought you the whole way. Like that's what kept you motivated. Your family's taken care of now,
right?
For sure. Like they don't have to worry anymore. They're taken care of. They have a nice life.
Yep.
Wife has a nice life. So like, do you feel like you've lost motivation because of that, or you still want to keep going?
No. So I still have certain aspects of our business that I'm really pursuing. Right. Like right now in my business. I'm not debating anymore. I know the answer. Like I could go larger and open up more to the public for what most people see as regular scrap. Like we don't buy cans, and like I could go that direction. But right now my drive is towards all the, I'll just call it exotic metals. I'm not going to get into it too much, but we do a lot of the different types of metals that huge corporate yards don't do. And I have a drive in that field right now where I want to have a real footprint. I see a huge market that's untapped down here.
Yep.
And that's where my drive is going towards. It's what I'm passionate about. Again, I can get bored with just aluminum and regular old run of the mill metals. Kind of like you're driving into this. You like the media aspect. You like, right? I have to find something that I'm passionate about consistently because I get really bored easily.
Yeah.
So I'm always pushing into a different area and trying something new. And it goes back to that risk. I'm not scared to risk doing.
Well, that market you're talking about is a super niche market, but it's like a high end market.
Yeah.
We don't have to get into all details because what you do is crazy. You have a periodic table in your office. Yeah. I remember the first time I visited your office, I walked in. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Yeah. I'm like, do you use that? And you're like, yeah, dude. I'm like, I don't want to know about it. But that's a super niche market. There's not a lot of competition.
Nope.
So that's a good way to go. Just even though you're passionate about it, other than that. Just as far as business opportunity, it's good to be an expert in a niche.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what's driving me now. I obviously want my kids to get involved. My son comes to the yard and works. He's 14 now. I know what I was like at 14 and you too. Like it's rough and but I want him to learn the business if he doesn't like it. I do want a legacy for the family, that's important to me.
Do you have a size of the business in mind or not? Not really. You don't think about it that way.
No, I don't have any numbers I want to meet. I just want to keep growing. I want to keep, because you and I talk about it, right? Like, you could have a $20 million a year business, but if you're netting 50%, so I'm kind of I fly by the seat of my pants on a lot of stuff. I really go with my gut, and kind of feel where everything's taking me,
I've never been super attached to a revenue size business. Never until now, because I'm starting to see like how it would scale up from 10 to 50, like what that would look like,
right?
And like the pieces that would need to be there, and then like what my current people, like what their positions would be if we were able to do it, like finance director, marketing director,
right?
Like all, sales director. So all those positions, I want my current people to have those positions. And the only way that happens is if we are like in the $30 to $50 million range.
Right.
So like it's not like a pride thing. It's just like that's where I feel like I got to get to for my people. All my people are young.
Yeah.
They're all young. They've all been with me since they started. No one's left, and they want to see it keep growing. So like even if I felt like, well, I'm satisfied here, my people wouldn't be. And then what kind of employer am I? I feel like I don't want to say trapped because it's not a bad thing, but I feel like I'm just committed because of them to just keep growing.
Well, and you're responsible for. I had that thought, as we started growing and we got more employees. You have employee wise a much bigger business. I mean, I have 8 guys, aside from me and my wife. But I'm responsible for their families, and I want them to grow as well. And I want to bring them up too. That's what it's all about, right? Mm-hmm. Just teaching them new things and letting them excel where they excel. That's something I had to learn too. Like. In the beginning, like we had guys come in that they're better at me than me at this, and staying out of their way, and it goes back into what you were saying. Your guys are all happy they stay with you. Is that culture, right? Like I've always known, we had a guy I brought in once, and he had a good work ethic, and I was looking at him like, he's a blue-collar guy, he's going to be good, and he worked hard. Terrible attitude, right? You got to go. You got to go. One thing I will not sacrifice is my company culture, because if you want that $50 million a year company, right, like, I guess it can happen without it. I don't know. I've never had one, but, like, your culture has to be good, in my opinion.
The business is so hard. I've never experienced like people leaving me left and right and people quitting and having to replace them and hire new people and train new people. I've never really experienced that.
Right.
But I can't imagine adding that to how hard the business already is.
Right.
You know, you've had someone here for 2 years, they get the systems down, they're crushing it, and then they fucking go. Then you got to hire a brand new person and wait another 2 years till they're as good as them. Like, that costs money, it's a headache, it's a pain in the ass. So, like, the culture is super important because I feel like, you know, I can't say this about every single employee I have, but I definitely know that I have a lot of lifers.
Yeah.
Which, that's important. Like, I can count on certain people that are always going to be with me. So, like, when you're thinking long-term about the business and you know you have these key pieces that are always going to be with you, you know, it's easy to envision, like, you know, we would all move up and they would do this.
He's going to be doing that.
Right. Do this.
Right. And we do that. We slowly, your systems are much more advanced than mine, but we're slowly doing it. As they move out, and you move a new guy in, you take a couple pieces of each system, put it in a new box, and have this guy, because you have more volume to handle now, right?
You talk about being passionate. I'm passionate about systems.
I know you are. Yeah.
But
I got to read the E-Myth. I know you told me to.
My difficult thing is finding the time to create the systems. Like, it's a lot of nights and weekends because the day's too hectic. There's too much going on. There's too many moving parts. To be able to just sit down calmly with no interruptions and, like, really think about the business and type everything out and adjust things.
Right.
So, like, it's hard to find the time to systematize everything. I've even considered starting to work from home because I would be less distracted and I'd still be available, but I would be able to focus a little more. But I just don't know if that's good for culture, so I've decided that I'm not going to do it.
I think I agree with that,
You know,
I think it's important seeing the owner there and having you involved day to day, even if it's just on some of the little, like, disagreements, right? Like, we got a guy right now who's, like, a little intimidated by another new employee. So trying to, like, integrate them and, like, you know, like, listen, Nick, you're not, and he doesn't speak great English, and, like having that, like, listen, Nick, you're not going anywhere, right? But, like, there's those little things that happen during the day that I joke with my guys. I see everything, you know, whether it's, they may not think I see it, but I see it. I know what's going on in my yard. And it might get to the point where it will, like, if it's too big, like, that doesn't happen, but we're still a small business. So I kind of have my thumb on what's going on. I can feel it. But yeah, I think if I were to go home work from home as well, like, I'd lose a little bit of that. I guess intimacy could be the right adjective.
Yeah,
but
for sure. All right, one more question before we wrap up. If you could give yourself in year one of your business one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, you're going to love this because it's the truth. And even though I don't do as much, like, market more. So, again, because we're business to business, like, we do a lot of face-to-face. I just redid my website. I invest a lot in my website and doing SEO and always adding blogs. And, you know, I have some guys that handle that for me. But, man, market more, you know, just for us, our type of business, and in every business you market a little differently, whether you're business to business or, you know, if you're just going to consumers, but market more, knock on more doors, be relentless, you know, because it always pays. It works every single time. And if you're doing business to business marketing, it's a thin line. We talk about it all the time, to remain relevant, yet not bug them, you know, because if you bug them too much, you're not going to get the business. If you fade away too much, they're not going to remember you when they are ready to make a switch. But it was a year and a half that we were going for this account. And there's other ones we've been going for 2 years that we still don't have. We'll get them. Year and a half, and they finally gave us the call. They switched it all. They love us. You know, our service is really, really good. But, you know, it's market more and have certain principles that you set down, that you operate by, that never waver. You have to have certain principles that you do, that you have, that are absolutes, you know. And we have certain things, like, we don't screw people on the scales. We just don't. And that's part of, like, my recovery, you know, being in recovery. Like, do honest, good work, you know. If you're a roofer, like, be honest on your scales. Like, the people I want to do business with are the people that have transparency. Like, some of my accounts, like, I tell them, like, listen, I got to make some money here on this one. I can, like, where do you want to, we're so open. Like, they're like, well, you know, this guy's giving us more picked up. And I'm like, well, do you want to see the cost in a trucking fee? Do you want to see no trucking fee and then there's less on your material? Like, we have a cost associated with this. And I find out, I think Ray Dalio talks about it, about radical transparency. Now, he talks about it within his business as well, which we're pretty transparent within the business. But have certain principles you're operating by, and don't stop marketing. Don't stop marketing. That's it. That's what it takes. Knocking on doors for our business.
Yeah, I didn't market in my first year. No? I didn't even know what marketing was. I don't think for real. I had a shitty company name, Andrew Thomas Contracting. I didn't market it to anybody. I didn't have a Google My Business. Like, it was just out there.
I remember, sorry to bring it on, but you had told me, it was after like the first year, or like I was in the year where I was doing like 400,000 and I wasn't even running QuickBooks. And you were like, dude, you're not running QuickBooks. I was like, no, the bank account doesn't lie. Like, I made 20 grand,
Yeah, but dude, that, like, all this shit, the way we started, we didn't know fucking anything.
No.
But you just learned it.
Yeah.
You just learned it. I swear, if you're a fucking super hard worker and you're just obsessed with learning, you're gonna make it.
Humility. Back
you can
in humility,
learn anything.
man.
You can learn anything on the internet. And if you're a hard worker and you put all this shit in the action you learn on the internet, you're gonna fuck it up, and then you're gonna learn and you're gonna figure it out.
Yep.
I didn't know anything either.
No.
The one thing I will say before we go about your marketing: paying an agency to do all your marketing isn't all the way marketing.
No.
So no one's gonna be able to market your business like you can.
Yep.
So if you take control of a little bit of your marketing, it's gonna be more effective. You know,
like, dude, what are you doing?
You've got
You've
got a crazy story that you could be telling people. That's marketing. You're gonna connect with more people if you're telling your story. You show the employees, you show the operations. You portray your business the way you want to portray your business, and it's gonna be more effective than generic blog posts and generic stuff like that.
Yep.
So.
And you know what it is? A lot of it, I'm opening enough with myself, is a lot of it is fear-based, right? Like, because I look at, and we can tie it into the comparison. I look at my business compared to the guys I'm comparing myself with. There's a couple in my industry that are really killing it on LinkedIn, and they have 6 yards, and I look at it, I'm like, and I'm like, well, we're not shit, But then also, you can look at it from the other perspective. It depends which way you're looking at it. Of like, how many guys who are out there scrapping would die to be in the position I'm in, So it's all about perspective, and for me, it's fear, and I agree. Like I said, now it's going to be me stroking a check and getting a digital marketing team.
Yeah, dude.
Like, I'll tell my wife, I'll be like, blame Andy, babe.
I mean, you see my marketing, obviously.
Yeah.
It's clean. It's professional. Sometimes it's like emotional. It pulls on people's heartstrings. Like, I just put $100 behind one Facebook video, and 40,000 people have seen it in 1 week.
Right.
And that's 40,000 people in my selected area. So that's not 40,000 people all over the country.
Right.
That's 40,000 people in my market that have seen one video for $100. But the video, there's no call to action. There's no, like, I'm not trying to get them to buy anything. There's not even an offer. The only link on the video is a link to my Facebook page. So we're not even really selling anything, but 40,000 people have seen it. And now I know who those 40,000 people are.
Right.
So I'm just going to keep putting videos in front of that same 40,000 people.
Yep.
And then eventually there's going to be one with an offer. And they've already seen my videos 7 times, so I'm warming them up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it works.
It's
every
solid.
time.
This is Wally. He doesn't do shit on social media, but anyway, where can people find you? Maybe if you do eventually.
www.scrapgators.com.
Perfect.
Thanks for having me, Andy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.